We both know there's about a million reasons not to make a film, and not having good equipment is one of them. Now you might think you could never really create something truly stunning or professional if you could only use your cell phone. But what if I told you people already have? In fact, there are some award-winning, stunningly gorgeous films out there that can hold their own with a cinema camera. You just gotta know how to make that phone sing, baby. We're gonna take a look at the 5 most beautiful films shot on iPhones that I could find on YouTube and what makes them exceptional. What makes us see past the fact that it's being filmed on a cell phone and maybe even make us believe it's being filmed on a higher end camera. Even up until the 90s and the early 2000s, filmmaking was just a super out of reach dream for anyone other than the super rich and the really, really well connected. So indie filmmakers can forget being good at film. You probably couldn't even try to make a film. I was in this class with a distributor recently and she said, if you made a film in the 90s, if you managed to make a feature-length film in the 90s, probably something would happen with it because just the fact that you made it and you did it was incredible. Cameras were just too expensive. Experience and education were hard to get. Less people did this, and YouTube, Instagram, whatever, none of that existed yet. And while making film is still ridiculously hard, a lot of older barriers don't exist anymore. Almost everyone has a 1080p camera in their pocket and anyone can make a YouTube. So what makes a creator stand out when everyone can create? Talent. Now that is a much more fair fight. The question, to some extent, isn't am I rich, it's am I good? If I'm hosting a film contest, it's not who can play because they can afford a camera, it's who's gonna bring me the most beautiful shot. It's unifying, it's equalizing, and it calls upon all of us to focus on honing our skills and developing our craft. Now take this all with a huge grain of salt because money does still make everything way easier. We can't change that. But if you're feeling limited by your own equipment, let's take a look at how to really make the most out of filming with the cell phone and what you can do to make it super cellularly cinematic. First up, Interior Room by Boris Takosvski. This is a student film and it centers around a writer struggling to capture their ideas on paper. It's a really surreal story with no dialogue and it focuses mostly on the visuals and the sound design. And this is one of those short films that lives or dies on cinematography, and I think they deliver. One thing that really strikes me about this is that they use a cell phone camera like a cinema camera, and they have created all these different layers and different depths. When a cell phone typically films in a pretty flat image because it's just meant to be a realistic representation of what it sees. This filmmaker uses lights, perspective, and shot composition to replicate the different planes that cinema lenses film in. So it automatically creates this more artistic and cinematic look in our minds. The biggest one for me here is lighting, lighting, lighting. Okay, this was not a person who said, I only have a cell phone, so I'm just gonna do what I can. This creator really went above and beyond to really go that extra mile to really light it cinematically. And they created a lot more depth than cell phone cameras typically pick up. You can see that the creator uses lights in different planes of the shot to create deeper and more dynamic shots. Or great angles, like this shot of the shadow of the blinds on the wall, right? This doesn't just happen. They did this. They went above and beyond to really make this effect. And it feels very cinematic and it draws us in and it just creates a more interesting shape than you would usually be able to get out of just a camera on your phone. Detail shots. This creator has some really great super close-ups that really emphasize great texture and really play to the high resolution image of the phone. Because the creator wasn't looking at the phone for what it can't do. They were looking at what it can do well and then really playing to those strengths. You can also see they've added a nice cinema bar to this, which can really elevate the look of your film if you're working from a phone. And of course, color. They have achieved a very cinematic color profile, which is something that you're gonna hear again and again and again in this video. So, my big takeaway from this one is create depth. If you can't get it through the lens, make it on the set. Up next, let's talk about The Glitch by Mateo Baldasare. This short deals with a lot of things that really could have worked against it. It's easy to come up with reasons why cheaper equipment creates limitations. But as the glitch demonstrates, you can create an award-winning visual film with just your smartphone and some good old-fashioned creativity, baby. The color palette of this movie really stands out to me. I love when filmmakers do yellow. I just think it's so interesting and it's so unique. So again, color is your best friend as a filmmaker. Now they've added an effect of film grain here, which is very unifying, and it also does create this subconscious feel of film. It's a popular effect, but this is a great example of someone using it sparingly and with intention. Film noise is always such a funny effect to me because when it happens on a digital camera, technically it's a flaw, but because film grain is a part of how film cameras function, there's just something about that flaw that looks good to us. It's pretty. And our brains do just read it as cinematic. But it's tricky to do in a way that plays to both, where you're highlighting the parts of it that are aesthetically appealing without emphasizing the parts of it that maybe look like you just didn't set your camera correctly. And in this case, I think they really nailed it. I would also imagine that the film grain is adding a really unifying effect from shot to shot, which would come in really handy with a cell phone when you don't have super specific control over the color settings from shot to shot. And lighting, again, we're already seeing that as a common thread. This one is a great example because it's not only using beautiful, colorful, artistic lighting, the lighting is actually a tool and almost a character that drives the story. The lighting really engages you and it pulls you in. So my big takeaway from this one is style. The art department really hits hard in this one, and they use really bold colors and a film grain to get a really powerful look. Okay, up next we've got The Path by Nils Kimmel. And now I'm gonna flip the script on you because I've really hammered home lighting for the last two, but this one was shot completely outside. What really strikes me about this one is the movement. Both the movement of the camera itself and also the movement that they've cut in the editing room when he bends down, when he hears something, when he turns around. It's just such a dynamic movie. I think it would actually be hard for me to focus on what camera this was filmed on because it's just so engaging. I don't think I'd be thinking about it. Now, I will say this one is sponsored by the Ji-Yoon Tech channel, so they specialize in gimbals, so movement kind of makes sense for them to nail, but they did nail it. I thought it was really inspirational, and I'm not even kidding. Next time I'm doing a storyboard or something, I think I'm gonna come back to this and watch it and get some ideas because the movement is just so strategic, it's so intentional, it's so well thought out. It's really captivating. Color is of course a big factor here, which would be doubly hard for them because again, they shot this all outside, but they've really achieved these really deep emeralds and the oceanic blues that we really associate with film, especially sci-fi and horror genres. And they used cinema bars, another big recurring trick. And it's just a super cool concept. It's a really cool concept, really well done. You just can't beat story. So my big takeaway from this one is create cinematic movement and just have a badass concept. All right, next we've got The Invasion by Majarich. If they didn't tell you that this film was shot on an iPhone, you wouldn't know. It's visually breathtaking and so easy to see why it won awards for cinematography. Invasion is exciting because it's a really prime example of how the barriers of filmmaking are falling away and we're really changing the way we approach storytelling. And they're not thinking about the phone as a hindrance, they're thinking about it as a tool to maximize. They even did intense animation on iPhone footage, which I gotta admit, that blew me away. I never would have been brave enough to try that. I never would have even thought to try that. It's super impressive. Truthfully, I just would have said, oh, I'm filming with an iPhone, so I can't do any effects. And I would have been wrong. They also accomplished really beautiful slow-mo in this, which again, I wouldn't have even tried it because of the frame rate. I wouldn't have even thought to attempt it. They didn't think about what can they not do because it's a cell phone. They thought about what can this phone do really well and how do we play to those strengths. And they just had fucking guts. My big takeaway from this one is effects. Don't let it stop you. Just push it. See what happens. See where you can take it. And our last one for today is Float by Aundre Larrow. So everything we've talked about so far is great and exciting, but what if you don't have money for effects or money for a gimbal? What if truly all you have is the phone in your pocket? Float is the perfect example of a film that takes the absolute minimum and really makes something beautiful. And this one focuses on my favorite filmmaking tool of them all, emotions. Now, by no means did they shy away from ambitious shots or creative shots or beautiful color, but for me, what really hit home about this piece wasn't the technical side of it at all. It's just the power of good storytelling, of honest, universal, powerful storytelling. If you have a story like that, you could film it on a 2008 flip phone and it would still be just as emotional, because they can't take that away. And there is no amount of money or fancy cameras or fancy equipment or crew who could ever buy you that. And so my big takeaway from this one is, if you learn how to be a beautiful storyteller, your movie will always be exceptional. Okay, so let's wrap this all up. I think there are two kinds of filmmakers out there. Type 1, who really studies hard, really knows all the gear inside out, really respects it, and can get really beautiful work with those cameras. And then there's Type 2, who you can give any camera to, and they will solve the puzzle of how to make it look beautiful. And remember, a good story is priceless, and you don't have to break the bank to make it come true. Your story deserves to be told, and technology is just making that dream more achievable than ever. So thank you so much for watching. Please go check all of these out, you guys. I really think you'll enjoy them, and I really think you'll get inspiration from them. So I've left them all in the links below. This honestly makes me want to go film something with my phone. Like, it makes me as a cinematographer want to challenge myself and get outside my comfort zone and just see what I can do. So let me know in the comments below if you've ever filmed anything on your cell phone and how it came out, or if maybe you're gonna go film something on your cell phone now. Please remember, you guys, to like and subscribe if you want to keep talking more micro budget, do-it-yourself, plucky little indie filmmaking. This is Raven from New 32, signing off.